never feeling satisfied. Putting on a smile, I was keeping it fake, but there's no limiting what I found in your grace. All the things I left behind are shadows, now I've seen the light. In my head, in my soul, my heart, my all, I know that never have I ever found a love so good, so good. Never have I ever gotten over living with you. Nothing will change it. All I can say is never have I ever found a love so good, so good. I've got a million reasons why I can't be the same. You've got me looking forward, never turning my gaze. Forever, God, it's you and I, together through the end of time. My head, my soul, my heart, my all, I know that I never have I ever found a love so good, so good. Never have I ever getting over living with you. Nothing will change it. All I can say is never have I ever found a love so good, so good. Love is patient, love is kind. Your love is never hard to find. Forever I am yours and you're mine. Alright, oh, never have I ever found a love so good, so good. Never am I ever getting over living with you. Nothing can change it. All I can say is never have I ever found a love so good, so good. There's a grace where the heart is under fire. Another way when the walls are closing in. And when I look at the space between where I used to be and this reckoning, I know I will never be alone. There was another in the fire, standing next to me. There was another in the waters, holding back the seas. And should I ever need reminding of how I've been set free, there is a cross that bears the burdens, where another died for me. There was another in the fire. Left for dead beneath the waters. I'm no longer a slave to my sin anymore. And should I fall in the space between what remains of me and this reckoning, either way I will bow to the things of this world. And I know I will never be alone. There is another in the fire, standing next to me. fire. Oh, there is another in the fire. Oh, there is another in the fire. Oh, there is another in the fire. Oh, see the light in the darkness as the darkness bows to him. I can hear the roar in the heavens as the space between glares thin. I can feel the ground shaking beneath us as the prison walls cave in. Nothing stands between us. Nothing stands between us. There is no other name but the name that is Jesus. He who was and still is and will be through it all. So come what may in this space between all the things unseen and this reckoning. I know I will never be alone. I know I will never be alone. There is another in the fire, standing next to me. There is another in the waters, holding back the seas. And should I ever need reminder, how good you've been to me. I'll count the joy from every battle, 'cause I know that's where you'll be. I can see the light in the darkness as the darkness bows to him. I can hear the roar in the heavens as the space between glares thin. I can feel the ground shake beneath us as the prison walls cave in. Nothing stands between us. Nothing stands between us. Standing next to me, there'll be another in the waters, holding back the seas. Should I ever need reminded, could you've been to me? Come the joy from every battle, 'cause I know that's where you'll be.
All right, hey, would you do me a favor? Go ahead and grab a seat. Grab a seat. Hey, here's what I need. We're gonna play a game tonight. I need 5 volunteers that are gonna step up, be courageous, play a game that you don't know what we're gonna play. Nothing will bite you, or, well, I can't guarantee what your teammates are gonna do. Let's go. Let's go, Caleb, Kaylee, Race. Let me see. I can't see who's right here. Right, Andrew. And all right, Emery, get up here. All right. Now I need 5 leaders. 5 adult leaders. I'm not gonna call you. Just get up here. All right. Hey, couple quick announcements as they make their way up here to the front. Again, we have opened up registrations for Rocky Mountain High for the shift experience. All of that's going to be on our website. Make sure that you go and check that out, hisgoodnews.com/youth. Tonight we are playing the Halloween Survey Says. So this is like our Family Feud kind of style game. So I need students on this side. I need leaders on this side. Let me get my buzzers in place. All right, we got my 5. We got my 4. I had 5. Reese is right there. She's coming. Making sure buzzers work. I'm just making sure I hear which one is which. They are. Oh. All right. Hey, here's how this is going to go. Is again, this is like Family Feud. You can listen to the crowd if you think that they're going to maybe pay off and help you out. But we say that we surveyed 100 people, and we're looking for the number 1 answer. If you don't get the number 1, then it's pass or play, and we'll go for three strikes, and you're out, because that's how it works. What? You talking? Hey, I say that we surveyed 100 people, and really it's just Maddie and I making up answers. No, it's not. Actually, we don't do anything. We found them online. All right, here we go. So, here is your first one. Name a superhero costume. Batman. Batman. Number 3 answer. Kaylee, you can steal it if you get the number 2 or number 1. Mermaids? Mermaids are the superhero of the year. You're getting a play. All right. All right, Tyler, name a Superman. Number 1 answer. All right, Kenzie. Wonder Woman. Yeah, number 4. Kim. Captain America. No. Josh. Spider-Man. There we go. All right, you got 1 strike. What? Iron Man. No. Strike 2. Black Panther. No. You guys can steal. If you can guess the number 5 answer, you get all the points and you win this round. Who do you think? Talk to each other. Talk to each other. Hulk? Yeah? All right. The Hulk. No. The number 5 answer is Catwoman. Jesus. All right. Leaders, you technically get all of those points. I'm not getting to the math, but you got some. Yeah. Name a Halloween party decoration. Oh, I heard Tyler. Pumpkins. Hey, player pass. You're going to play? All right, Kenzie. Bats. No, not at this party. Not yours. All right, Kim. Halloween party decoration. A witch. Yeah. That was number 5. Josh? Skeletons. Number 4 answer. Taylor? Spiders or spider webs? Yep. Number 2. All right. They only have 1 strike, just so you guys are keeping track. Ghost. Hey. All right. Kenzie, back to you. There's 1 answer still on the board. Scarecrows. No. Get ready to steal, because I don't know if Kim's going to get this. All right, Kim. Candles? Candles. No. Not at this party. All right, guys. There's 1 answer still on the board. Name a Halloween party decoration. Talk amongst yourselves. Leaves? Candy? Candy? You're going with candy? Candy! No! Number six answer. Skulls. Separate. It's separate. It's separate. Not the same as a skeleton. It's a skull. I don't know. All right. We're going to let you guys play another round, even though. Get up here. Hurry. Name a scary sound effect. Look at that. A ghost sound, which would be, you guys are scary. Boo. There we go. There's one answer better. Ah! That was scary. All right, a scream of some shrieking. There we go. Look at you guys getting that one again. All right, you guys got to play or pass? We're going to pass. All right, you guys got to sell this. Name a scary sound effect. What order are you in? You're not in an order. All right, Caleb. Like a witch laughed, which sounds like? No, it's not even up there, so it doesn't matter. Reese, name a scary sound effect. Not me. That doesn't sound like. Oh. Which one? I don't know if it was an owl. I think an owl sound. Like a hoo sound. No? A door creaking. Yes. Good one. A monster sound, like a roar. No. All right. You guys, a dolphin? Scary. All right, you guys got a chance to steal. Right here. Sell it for me. Crying. No. What was number 5? Howling. Yeah. Number 4. Moaning. Like a zombie thing, I think. All right. Good game. You guys can go take a seat. Good job. Thanks, Jamie. All right, hey. Real quick before we dismiss 5th graders. Hey, here's one thing that we need to bring to attention. If you saw on our Instagram post, we are encouraging face masks more and more just because numbers continue to rise. Again, we're not requiring, but we are encouraging because as much as we don't like necessarily wearing them all the time, we want to continue to meet together. And so if that means that wearing a mask allows us to still meet together in the same place, then that's what we're going to encourage. And so our leaders are wearing them. We encourage you to do the same thing. Again, we want to be safe. We want to protect you. We want to keep everybody healthy. And so just throwing that out there again, we're not requiring, but strongly encouraging because, again, we know what it was like back in March when all of a sudden we were doing everything online. We don't want to go back there. And so as much as we can, let's stay here, stay healthy, stay together. Okay? 5th graders, would you do me a favor? Go ahead and stand up. 5th grade. You guys can go ahead and follow Matt and Maddie out the door. Everybody say, see ya. All right. As they go ahead and watch the video on the screen. All right. Hey, if you guys were here last week, you saw that same exact video because we are going into week 2 on racism. We heard from a number of students as well as a number of our leaders saying we just got to the surface of where we need to go when we were talking about this topic last week. And so we're going to take it 1 week further. And so tonight we're going to dive into this topic one more time. And again, high schoolers and small groups, you're going to have an opportunity to go there. Middle schoolers, you kind of heard a little bit from your leaders already. But here's the thing is we believe that, yes, we talked about it last week. I gave you the picture of Jesus sharing the story of who's my neighbor. But here's the thing. There's so much more that we need to be talking about. And even tonight, we're not going to cover it all. That I believe that there's so much that we can talk about when it comes to race and social injustice. And yet, as much as I want to continue going on this, I know that there's more topics that are heavy on your heart. And therefore, tonight will be the last night that we talk about this one. Next week, we already have one lined up, ready to go. And I'm not even going to teach it to you. So make sure that you guys are here next week. Don't clap for that. Ouch. So, next week, make sure that you're here. You'll find out the topic, you'll find out the person, and it's going to be amazing. And so, over the next, again, however many weeks, we're going to be hitting so many different topics that are prevalent to you, that are in your face, that you are dealing with day in and day out. And we want to give you a biblical understanding of how to handle those things. And so, tonight, again, we're going to talk about race because as much as we talked last week just about this idea of how to be a good neighbor, how to be the one that, when it comes time, we're treating everybody equally. And here's the thing is, we see this spoken about, and we've seen it even more in the last 6-7 months, but I still believe that the church needs to be doing a better job. That when it comes down to it, we should be a place that everybody is envious of how well we treat everyone else. And yet I think that we missed the mark because honestly, I believe that the church has taken its cue from the world, not the other way around. That as the church, we should be on the leading edge of this conversation. We should be the one that the world is looking to see how are we doing this? How are we talking about this? How are we treating everybody equally? Because that's where it starts. And in fact, in Romans chapter 12, verses 1 and 2, we're going to jump right into it, and it says this: Therefore, I urge you, brothers and sisters, in view of God's mercy, to offer your bodies as a living sacrifice, holy and pleasing to God. This is your true and proper worship. And then verse 2: Do not conform to the pattern of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Then you will be able to test and approve what God's will is, his good, pleasing, and perfect will. There's always going to be competing sides when you are a Christian. You're going to have the world side of it, and you're going to have God's side of it. And our job is to be able to submit ourselves to God's will, therefore saying that, God, whatever you lead me to do, I'm going to follow that direction, not the other way. That I think that each and every one of us have the opportunity to face certain decisions along the way. Decisions that either you're going to fall into place because that's what the world is saying to you, or you're going to fall in line with what you believe God is telling you to do. And that's what Romans 12 is telling us to do. We're not going to conform. We're not going to fall into the way that the world is handling this topic or any of the topics that we're moving forward with. And instead, we're going to submit ourselves to God's will and to his leading and to his direction, and we're going to pursue what he's leading us to do. Because here's the thing is, it's hard. That it's easier for us to just fall in line and follow with what everybody else around us is doing. But I believe that God has called us to handle things differently, and therefore that means that we pursue him, his plan, his purpose, his will, and in doing so, hopefully we can handle things a little bit better. But when it comes to issues of race, the world would have you believe and act some ways, and a lot of Christians are taking the bait, that you're taking your cues from the world around you and not what from God has asked you to do. Throughout history, the church has been plagued by worldly thinking in many different ways, meaning that we have fallen in line with the world much more than we have with what the Bible says. And I think most of you would agree that that's true, that we've taken our cue from the world, not from the Word. Here's the rub. Most people think that I'm talking about someone else right now. That most of you sitting here, you're like, oh, I don't need to hear this. I'm not racist. I'm not biased. And I'm not saying that you are. But deep down, I think each and every one of us have certain things that are instilled in us that make us think a different way, act a different way, treat people differently, And we need to be able to think about those things. And so when I'm talking tonight, um, don't be thinking that I'm talking about someone else. I'm going to be bold enough to say I'm talking directly to you. And that's where we need to go tonight is I want to be upfront with you, and this is going to be a difficult message for some of you to hear. In fact, it's a difficult message for me to give. Because I believe that again, there are certain things that even I myself, I'm confessing this to you, that I am biased, I am racist, I am dealing with these things on my own. And so as I share this with you, it's through my own wrestling, and a lot of that, which has been over the last 7 months, that I've been struck with things that I've been brought up with, ways that I was told to think about different things. And I'm now trying to have to go back through and filter those things out through the lens of who God has called us to be, not through what the world says is okay. And so, on my part, I'm asking for this. Hear me. Please hear me tonight. That when I'm talking, hear me, because at the end of the day, whether you believe it or not, we need to filter all of these things through the lens of the Bible. And on your part, then I'm asking that I'm going to try to be gentle. But at the same time, I do not want to turn from the Bible, and I do not want to, at the other side, use the Bible as a bat to beat you with. So I'm going to try to handle this with grace. But here's the thing is we have to understand, as Christ followers, we need to be doing a better job. There's a study that was done earlier this year by a Christian named Samuel Perry. He published this in the Journal of the Scientific Study of Religion, and it actually shows that the church is struggling more on race issues than those that are our counterparts, those that say that they don't believe in God at all. That should be scary for us to see. That for us as people who believe in God and believe in Jesus Christ and believe that all people are created equally, we are struggling more on this issue than people that say they don't believe in God at all. And why is that? Why is it that we're the ones that are struggling more? Because we're supposed to be the lives or people that live lives of reconciliation. But how are we going to do this? We need to start with being kingdom minded. We need to stop regarding people like us highly or more highly than people who aren't like us. I think that if you look around the room, I said this last week, that it's hard for us because we're heavily white, heavily middle, upper class, and therefore when it comes to race, we don't deal with it because it doesn't affect us personally. And so, when it comes down to it, we have to lay aside our prejudice and willfully choose to hear, love, and honor people who are different from us. Last week we talked about the greatest commandment. We got into this whole thing of the Good Samaritan. We talked about what it means to be a good neighbor. And what it came down to is the greatest commandment is love God with everything that you have, heart, soul, mind, and strength. And the second commandment is just like it. Love your neighbor as yourself. And as I told the story of the Good Samaritan story, again, there's this whole thing of Jewish and Samaritan people. There is race issues between the two of them. And I believe that within that, we got a glimpse of, okay, this isn't a new thing for us to deal with. It's been around forever. But what we need to see is that when Jesus told them, it was completely contrary to what they deeply held prejudices towards. The people that were dealing with race, it was like a slap in the face because they had yet to have to really deal with it until Jesus actually brought it to their attention. James talks about this in James chapter 2. He talks about showing favoritism, though. And here's what I need you to wrap your mind around is this idea of favoritism may catch you a little bit off guard when it comes to this idea of race. But in James chapter 2, verses 8 to 10, it says, if you really keep the royal law found in Scripture, love your neighbor as yourself, you are doing right. But if you show favoritism, you sin and are convicted by the law as lawbreakers. For whoever keeps the whole law and yet stumbles at just one point is guilty of breaking all of it. The word favoritism is us really looking at it, and it means to have regard for external condition of a man. This obviously includes many things, but certainly it applies to race. Your neighbor includes people who do not look like you. Your neighbor includes people who are not the same race as you. Your neighbor may hold views regarding race and racial reconciliation that are different than yours. You have to love them. We can't cast them aside just because they're not like us. As division becomes more and more prevalent, people seem to be having this tendency toward bias. Many of our responses become predetermined or easily swayed in order to keep us in line with our tribe. I believe that we are in a room full of people that are very committed to their tribes, and unfortunately, the tribe that I'm talking about in this sense is that you're American, you're Republican, you're Democrat, you're Libertarians, and therefore, if anything is outside of your personal tribe, you view that differently. What I want you to do is I want you to think about your tribe being different than that. Your tribe, your citizenship, your identity ought to be rooted in Christ. 1 Peter 2 verse 9 says, "But you are a chosen people, a royal priesthood, a holy nation, God's special possession, that you may declare the praises of him who called you out of darkness into his wonderful light." That when it comes down to it, the person that looks different than you is no different than you. It doesn't matter what their skin color is or what their background is. In God's sight, we are all created equally. But I'm going to stop, and I want you to really think about that. Today, when you saw somebody who looked different than you, was there something inside of you that came up? Did you truly think that I'm better than that person? Was there something inside of you that this bias that you have that all of a sudden started speaking louder because you view yourself better than somebody who looks different than you? That's in your face, isn't it? Because here's what I will tell you as somebody who grew up in a small town that honestly, there's two people in my town that did not look like me. Two people that had skin color that was different than mine. That's different than you, right? Most of you are growing up in schools where it's pretty diverse. And therefore, you've seen everything. But the question is do you still have those biases? And I'm going to go as far as, do you have a bit of racism in you? For me, I was conditioned to think differently because of how somebody appeared to me. My grandparents talked to me in a certain way about people of color. My parents then carried that on. And I guarantee you there's parts of that that are still inside of me. When it comes down to it, who are you and who are the people that you consider your neighbors? When I was younger, I always pointed out to that my Christian friends always got to do things that I didn't get to do. Like I really struggle with the fact that my parents were so strict on me that they wouldn't allow me to go to movies that had a certain rating, even though my friends got to. Or you guys probably don't remember this, but there was a TV show back when I was growing up called Seinfeld. And my parents wouldn't let me watch that TV show because they heard that it had certain things in it. And my parents' response every time, and I even used like my pastor's kids as a reference, saying, well, Pastor so-and-so's kids get to do this, thinking that maybe that would make them loosen up on some of their strict rules that they had on me. Some of you are like, yep, my parents are just as strict. But here's what it came down to. Every time that I would raise my concern and try to voice my thoughts on these kind of issues, they said, well, we're not their parents. Or the second would always be, you're a member of this family, not of that family. You will act like it. But going back to what I just read from 1 Peter, Peter is saying you're a member of God's family, not the world's family. Act like it. We are God's people, God's children. Let's live like it. Don't give in to whatever the world is doing around you. Give yourself over to God and love like His child. Now, let me be very clear about something, because I understand that some of these words are very charged. It's possible that people have developed some prejudices, but I wouldn't say that they're necessarily racist. There are times when we will learn that something we are doing is saying is viewed as racist by people on the receiving end of this. I do think that holding on to it or dismissing their pain is pretty revealing, though. Racism comes down to sinful thoughts, whether it's cloaked in a compliment or personal feelings of superiority. It is not our place to make distinctions or promote stereotypes about another person based on inherent qualities given to them by God. Many people of various races already feel like they don't fit into society based on what they see in the media. They already feel like an outsider, viewed as certain stereotypes from Hollywood. Worse yet, many feel that way about the church. Again, look around you. The church is the most segregated place on a Sunday morning. Paul says in 2 Corinthians 10:5 that you should take every thought captive. So whenever these prejudicial thoughts and patterns creep in, you have to take that captive. They have no place in your mind. Our biases do not die overnight. We have to capture those trains of thought before they derail us. Capture every thought. Now, I want to look at a couple of worldly responses to racial issues that have come up over the last couple of months. Number one is I believe that there's a lot of us that think that we can just dismiss any argument that comes up on either side. I think that we are dismissive when people cry out in pain, and therefore when we see people rioting, we can't understand it. We just think, why are they rioting? Why are they breaking stuff? Why are they causing damage? And we just try to dismiss it. And I believe that dismissing it is what got us to this point in the first place. That again, we said that racism is not a new thing. In fact, it goes all the way back to Bible times, but we know that here in America it's been around for 400 plus years. Now, here's the thing is, if it's been around for that long, and people of color have been crying out for that long and they've always been silenced, then how is it going to come up? And so when we see people rioting, trust me, I don't agree that they should be breaking stuff or causing damage. But if they riot peacefully, they have every right to riot peacefully. That we can't just dismiss their feelings, because I believe, again, that is what got us where we are now. Over the last couple months, we've seen this, but if you remember about 5 years ago, there was a big movement for the removal of Confederate statues and flags from the government property. We just saw this again. But Confederate flags then started to appear more and more and more when it started 5 years ago. People who had never owned one suddenly were flying them all over their yards, put on their vehicle, and wore shirts that showed them as symbols. People said that it hurt them to see the Confederate flags, the statues, the symbols. People around here determined that it was hurtful, and then they rubbed their noses in it. Or how about over the course of the last 9 months? Ever heard the term Kung Flu? Think about it from the standpoint of a president standing at a stage calling the coronavirus Kung Flu. And what does that do to our Asian brothers and sisters? That what was being said wasn't helping. And especially as hate crimes against them were on the rise, and all it did was embolden more hate. Many people determined that it was not offensive and hurtful, and they shouted it all the more. Why was that the reaction? I think that the most part, people weren't trying to be racist. I think they're sticking it to the man, telling the government not to tread on them. They won't be told how to behave or speak, but who got hurt? People of color. People of color who have been dealing with this for so long. People of color who are already hurting. There's an episode of a TV show, if you've ever watched The Office. I really regret that I'm even quoting anything from The Office from the stage. But if you remember, Michael has left Dunder Mifflin and he's starting his own paper company, and he's actually stolen some of the clients from the sales staff at Dunder Mifflin. And yet, he's confronted by Phyllis. And he couldn't believe that Phyllis was upset with him. She said, "You thought you were attacking corporate, but we're the ones that got hurt." When all of a sudden the world around you is acting in a certain way, and all of a sudden we see that people of color are being hurt more and more and more, they're the ones that are continuing to get hurt. Christians think that they're sticking it to the man, pushing back at the government, but it's regularly people who are getting hurt. People of color are saying, "Hey, this hurts," and we've been guilty of dismissing it, and even worse, we've turned the volume up on the offense. If dismissiveness is the worldly response, then what's the godly response? Listening, hearing people. Romans 12, verses 15 to 16 says, "Rejoice with those who rejoice, mourn with those who mourn, live in harmony with one another. Do not be proud, but be willing to associate with people of low position. Do not be conceited." Do you ever elevate yourself above the people around you? And more than that, do you ever elevate yourself over people of color? Do you think it's possible to live in harmony with people of color when we're dismissive of their hurting? I'd say society has proven that it's not. Have you made friends by sharing some memes dismissing their pain and suffering and making fun of their cries of restoration? When you see things come up on the news about rioting or Black Lives Matter, do you dismiss it because you want to take a stance on the other side? For us, we need to see that in all of this situation, that we need to be able to listen. We need to be able to hear. And we need to be able to understand that when we look at the history of America and we see that there is racism throughout centuries, do we truly understand what that means? Do we understand why people of color react in a certain way when all of this starts to come to the surface? Do we understand what has even led to this situation in the first place? I want you guys to watch a video real quick because I think it allows us to get a glimpse at what is systemic racism. It's only 4 minutes long, so just watch this video here.
which makes it very hard to solve. So what can we try? The first thing we can do is work towards becoming more aware of your own implicit bias. What are some prejudices that you might hold that you're not aware of? Second, don't acknowledge that the consequences of slavery and Jim Crow laws are still affecting access to opportunities today. As a result, we should support systemic changes that create more equal opportunities for everyone. Increasing public school funding and making it independent from property taxes would be a great step so that poor and wealthy districts can receive equal access to resources. Systemic problems require systemic solutions. Luckily, we're all part of the system, which means that we all have a role to play to make things better.
So if he says that all of us have a role to play, what does that actually look like? Because when it comes down to it, it's going to take some humility on our part. That when it comes to one other response that we tend to default to is it's one of pride. That what about me? What about my rights? Why should I say Black Lives Matter and not all lives matter? Doesn't my life matter? Don't all lives matter? But why should I be sorry for something that I didn't even do? Is a response that many of us still have. Please allow me to give you one opinion in response to this before I move back to the Bible. But did you know that you can be sorry for something that you didn't do or even be responsible for? Like, here's an example. If I told you that this week I lost a loved one, your response would probably be, I'm so sorry. Not because you are the one that actually made me lose somebody. It's because you love me, hopefully. But when it comes down to it, and we see that racism has been a part of our history and is still happening today, we can still be sorry, even though we may not be the ones that started it or have been a part of it. We can say that we're sorry for slavery, for segregation, for systemic injustices that have happened to people of color, not because we have done anything or that we're responsible for it, but maybe we are to an extent, but because we love people. And it grieves me that they have been hurt and they continue to hurt. The worldly position is care about me, my rights, my dignity. But what's the kingdom response? What's the Bible response? What would Jesus really do? He would humble himself, put aside his own rights. He'd seek to help those who are hurting, restore them with no regard for what is at cost for him. And in fact, in Philippians chapter 2, verses 5 through 8, it says, in your relationships with one another, have the same mindset as Christ Jesus, who being in the very nature God, did not consider equality with God something to be used to his own advantage. Rather, he made himself nothing by taking the very nature of a servant, being made in human likeness. And being found in appearance as a man, he humbled himself by becoming obedient to death, even death on the cross. We are challenged to adopt the same mindset as Jesus in our earthly relationships. His mindset was one of humility. His mindset was one of self-sacrifice, not worrying about what he deserved or what we deserved. His mindset was one of reconciliation. His mindset was fully one of love, and he asks us to do the same thing. We must change the way that we act. Don't share that post. Don't say that thing. Don't tell that joke. Capture those thoughts. These are good choices. But ultimately, we can't just change our behavior. We have to turn from this to that. We have to let God change our hearts to really transform us, like Romans 12:2 says. So let's wrap this thing up with Colossians chapter 3, verse 11 to 12. It says, here there is no Gentile or Jew, circumcised or uncircumcised, barbarian, Scythian, slave or free, but Christ is all and is in all. Therefore, as God's chosen people, holy and dearly loved, clothe yourselves with compassion, kindness, humility, gentleness, and patience. If it really comes down to it, and God says that all are created equal, that there is no Gentile or Jew, let us act that way. Let us respond like Paul says, compassion, kindness, humility, gentleness, and patience. Will you pray with me? God, tonight, again, a heavy topic, but a needed topic because, God, we see it every day. That we as a church have done a poor job of treating people equally. We as the world have definitely done a poor job of loving each other. God, I pray that we would get it right. That we wouldn't show favoritism to people that look like us, and in fact, we would look at other people and consider themselves greater than we are. That we would follow the example of Jesus of humbling ourselves, putting other people first, acting with compassion, with kindness, with humility. Because Jesus, that's how you would do it. So I pray that we would get this right. Jesus, I pray that we would look for ways over the course of the next week to even educate ourselves so that we can understand the history of racial issues within this country. That we would examine ourselves, that we would look deep within to see if there are implicit biases that we all carry. That when we look to our neighbor, we would see somebody that you love and care for deeply, and we would do the same. God, continue to allow us to become better at being the people that you've created us to be, better at loving our neighbor. We love you. It's in your name we pray. Amen. Will you guys go ahead and stand? We got one more song before we're dismissed.
Hold me now in the hands that created the heavens. Find me now where the grace runs as deep as your scars. You pulled me from the clay. You set me on a rock and called me by your name. Made my heart whole again. Lifted up, and my knees know it's all for your glory. That I might sin with more reasons to sing than to fear. You pulled me from the clay. You set me on a rock. You called me by your name. Made my heart whole again. So here I stand, I in surrender. I need you now. Hold my heart now and forever. My soul cries out. Once I was broken, but you loved my whole heart through. Sin has no hold on me, 'cause your grace holds me down. That grace owns the ground where they graved it, where all my shame remains, left for dead in your wake. You crashed those age-old gates. You left no stone unturned. You stepped out of that grave. You shouldered me all the way. So here I stand, I in surrender. I need you now. grace holds that ground. And your grace holds me now. And your grace holds me now. Grace holds me now. Grace holds me now. Oh. Here I stand, I in surrender. I need you now. Hold my heart now and forever. My soul cries out. So here I stand, I in surrender. I need you now. Hold my heart now and forever. My soul cries out. Here I stand, I am surrender. I need you now. Hold my heart now and forever. My soul cries out. Once I was broken, you love my whole heart. See, there's no hold on me. Grace holds me now. Feeling forgiven. Look where my chains are now. Death has no hold on me. 'Cause your grace holds that ground. 'Cause your grace holds me now. Grace holds me now. Grace holds me now. Grace holds me now. I'm forgiven. Look where my chains are now. Death has no hold on me. 'Cause your grace holds that ground. Your grace holds me now. Your grace holds me now.
Amen. Well, you guys can head to small groups.